Hi everyone, and welcome to Time Out with Remax. Well, today is National Pink Day, and what we want to do is raise awareness around this very serious disease, breast cancer. In today's session, Sam Stewart is going to share her unique story of courage and bravery as a cancer survivor. I hope you enjoy this session.
Hi Remax, my name is Sam Stewart and I'm 44 years old. I am very happily married and I live in Cape Town. I am a breast cancer survivor. 16 years ago, I was diagnosed with a very rare form of breast cancer called HER2 positive breast cancer. And I was given 6 months to live. And through that process, it really has completely changed my entire existence, my whole life, as one can well imagine. But before that, I'd already been through a lot in my life. So I grew up in a small town, Somerset West. I lived an idyllic life as a kid. I was very, very blessed. My father unfortunately abandoned us when I was 6 months old. So my mom worked 2 jobs to help put my brother and myself through school. We never wanted for anything. We were a very happy home. We lived with my grandmother and we used to ride our BMXs after school down to the wine farm and press grapes. And we had nothing to complain about really. Unfortunately, when I was 12 years old, I met a man who was 17 years old. He was at the local theater and I ended up dating him. And through events that were out of my control, unfortunately, he really turned out to be a massive abuser. And I went through the entire period of my childhood living with this bipolar manic monster who eventually moved into our house when I was 15 years old. And my existence pretty much existed with guns to my head and guns in my mouth on a daily basis. And I was traumatized, as you can well imagine. And when I was 15 years old, my mom found out that my hair was falling out and all the kids at school were laughing at me. And so she sent me to a psychiatrist. And unfortunately, the psychiatrist just saw it fit to medicate me rather than get the root of the problem, which was, of course, this abusive relationship that I was in. So I spent my entire rest of my high school Prozac on 200 million Prozac a day, like a zombie. Because remember, this is the 90s. They didn't really know a lot about all these, situations and bipolar disorders and everything. So they basically medicated me. And I remember not remembering much of my high school career. And unfortunately, I took to alcohol and going out on weekends and partying and doing stupid things because I was with a guy who was way older than me, And that was just really to forget and to kind of disconnect from what was happening. As a child, it's very difficult to deal with those situations. So what you do is you almost create an avatar of yourself. But I made myself smaller and I pretty much disappeared. And we got married when I was 21 years old. And I'll never forget the day that I broke the spell of abuse. And he had come to my office and there'd been an office party. And as usual, he had not wanted me to be there. And I went to my car and I felt the cold barrel of the gun at my head. And I just cracked. And I said to him, pull the effing trigger. And he just started crying. And I broke the spell. And I remember feeling this intense rush of emotion and also almost like a superpower, because it was having been through basically at that stage, 9 years worth of this abuse, I had envisioned this man to be this monster. And in fact, all he was a coward. And this is why I say to women who've been through abuse as well, the thing is that 9 times out of 10 they are cowards. People say, why did you stay? And well, he told me he was going to kill me and I believed him. So unfortunately, I lost my youth and he was very possessive of me. I didn't have any friends or anything like that. And we got divorced and he left the country and I was very grateful for that. And I've never seen him again. I then ended up being very successful in Johannesburg in IT, and I was burning the candle at both ends, and I had bought my own house and I paid it off, and I was really doing very well. And it was a woman in a man's world, so it was tough back then. I mean, I'm talking like the late 90s in IT. I was pretty much the only woman in the boardroom very often. And I remember being so, focused on being successful, and the only thing that mattered to me. And I think it was obviously because I had self-love issues, and I thought I could find self-love in being successful. And I found a lump under my arm when I was 29 years old, and it was very close to like under my arm. So I thought it was a gland. And I remember my boss at the time, Shalinia, saying to me, you need to go for a mammogram. You need to go for a mammogram. And all I was thinking was, this is such an inconvenience. I do not have time for this. My diary is packed full. I've got things, I've got presentations. And she nagged me and she nagged me. And luckily I listened to her, because I went for the mammogram. And by the way, my mom says I'm alive because I'm stubborn, because the woman did the mammogram and said, oh no, we can't find anything. And here's a hint and tip: in women under the age of 40, your breasts are very fibrous. So very often a mammogram doesn't pick anything up. So you need to go for a sonar. So because of my stubbornness, nothing else, I said to her, yes, there's a lump. I want a sonar. Anyway, they did the sonar and immediately picked something up. And she made an immediate appointment for me to go and see the surgeon. And by some weird fate, his name was Dr. Hyde. So I walked into Dr. Hyde's office, still annoyed because I didn't have time to, cancel meetings and everything like that. And he just said to me, young, there's no cancer in your family. Let's go and take the lump out. And so I remember getting this little book. He wrote on this little like carbon book, like, you get at CNA, 1 times lumpectomy, and he tore it out and he gave it to me. It was very weird. And I had to go and book myself in downstairs. And I still remember not thinking anything of this. I was like, oh man, this is just a pain. And then I went in on the Monday, carried on like nothing had happened. On the Friday, I got a phone call from his office saying, you need to come in for the results. And I remember driving to the hospital thinking, what an inconvenience, because it was my best friend's 30th birthday and I still had to get to the bottle store to go and buy stuff that she'd asked me to. And I was going to be running late now. And this was just not part of my plan for the day. Well, I walked into Dr. Hyde's office, and as I opened the door, I knew I had cancer. The look on his face just told me everything. And I remember sitting in his office for the next hour and him drawing pictures and everything. And I literally, it was like the mouth was moving and I didn't hear a word the dude said. And this is why part of my hints and tips are always take somebody with you to these meetings, because you don't think it can happen to you, but I'm here to tell you it can happen to anybody. And when you least expect it. And so he told me to make the decision right then and there to remove my breast or not remove my breast. And I decided to ask him the question because he's the doctor, right? So I said, well, what would you do? I don't know. And now I realize, and this is also very important for everybody to understand, do not let doctors pressure you. You can take time out to make the decision. I shouldn't have made the decision right then and there. I should have gone away and thought about it. But I said, remove the whole breast. What they would do now is they would first do chemotherapy and they would put a tumor marker in. And then they would do the surgery afterwards. And there's so many good things about that, because then you can see whether the chemotherapy is working or not, which is pretty important. Also, you might end up saving part of your breast that way. So anyway, did not know that, went in, had the breast removed, was in hospital for 10 days. And I remember being in hospital for 10 days is a long time when you're a high-flying person. And actually, still at that point, I was in denial to get back to work. It hadn't sunk in how bad the cancer was yet. So after my mastectomy and after my recovery, I went to see an oncologist, and they said to me, Samantha, you're going to need years worth of oncology therapy and of chemotherapy, and then you're going to need radiation. So I did the chemotherapy and I did the radiation, and I had a lot of complications during that time. My doctor said to me, we're going to throw the kitchen sink at you because you're young. And they did. And I was in the chemo chair 6.5 hours. And it was really, really tough. It was, you can't explain it unless you've been through it, but suffice it to say that it literally nukes your body from the inside out. So it is not a nice process to go through. And one still suffers the effects of it pretty much for the rest of your life. in some way or another. So it's nothing to sneeze at, but I made it and I was super happy, and I booked a holiday away, and I was like, yeah, I've made my treatment. And I, after my last chemo, I went in to see my oncologist, and I was like, of course, elated. I'm done. I can move on with my life. And she said to me, well, Sam, we've actually got some more bad news. You've got a very rare type of cancer, but if you do not get this drug and the medical aid don't approve it, you're not going to survive. And so started a battle with the medical aid, which I'm sure many of you in other areas of your life have had to deal with for any types of healthcare issues. It's not easy. And that process really changed my life, because I remember being in the chemo room the first time that we actually got the drug, because we won our case. People said we couldn't do it. Even my own family was saying to me, Sam, don't bother. You're never going to win. They're too big. And once again, that stubborn gene kicked in. So I wanted what was fair and what was right. That's all that I wanted. And I remember the first day of getting that treatment. Wow, it was so amazing, because there was myself and 7 other women, and they didn't want to be in the media, because it's a tough journey when you're fighting cancer to have to do that as well. And so I just took the fight to the media, and I was everywhere. And within the space of less than a month, we won our case. And the first time we got this drug, it was myself and the 7 other women and their families in the treatment room. And one of the woman's daughters came to me, and she put her hand on my shoulder, and she said, you saved my mom's life. Well, that was me. I couldn't go back to corporate after that. So I just quit my job and started an advocacy NGO. And I had no idea what that meant at the time, but what it ended up meaning was fighting for cancer patients for access to treatment against medical aids for 7 years. I had about 50 cases a month. I was sponsored by Livestrong and American Cancer Society. I've done a lot of work for improving access in the public system as well. But unfortunately, the problem with that is I just was still giving everything to everybody else, and I ended up empty. And my oncologist says he likes to give the best analogy for me of a nervous breakdown, which I ended up having. That if you take a sponge and you pour water on it, and you pour water on it, and you pour water on it, eventually the water can't go anywhere, and the water just comes out. And I remember this woman phoning me the one day asking me for help, and I couldn't help her because she just didn't have the right access on her plan. So there was no point in even trying to fight for it. And she started shouting at me. Now I realize, looking back, she was obviously projecting and everything, but at that time you don't feel that way. You know, you take it on. And I remember dropping to the floor, and I felt like I was in a straitjacket and I couldn't breathe. And I was hospitalized for 2 weeks, and I couldn't do it anymore. And I realized, you know, one of my very close healers at the time said to me, Sam, you can't help other people if you're not okay. And we all know that analogy of when you're in the airplane, what do? You need to put the oxygen mask on yourself first, otherwise you're not going to be able to help anybody if you're not alive. So I actually completely withdrew from the NGO for my sanity and for my health, because I was still doing cancer treatment. I was actually re-diagnosed 6 months after I finished my cancer treatment. My cancer came back, and it was in my lymph nodes. And I then started another 9 years worth of being in the chemo room every 3 weeks, intravenous treatment. So I came back home to Cape Town, and I started working again, and slowly but surely I found myself going back into the corporate headspace and the corporate grind. And I found myself slipping back into that mentality of, well, I'm not living a purpose-driven existence. This is not really for me. And I started getting more and more depressed. And by this time, I'd met my husband, who I'm very happily married with now. And we've known each other for 20 years. He was my next door neighbor in Johannesburg. And that's a massive story. It's a beautiful story. And he, through the love that he gave me, which I had not experienced before, it started dissolving all of these issues that I'd had around self-love, around being abandoned by my father, treated badly by my ex-husband. And he started loving me back to life, basically. And it's a really beautiful thing, but the one thing that really can save the world and save people is love. That is it. And people ask me, why are you alive? I'm like, because of love. because of loving myself, learning to love myself, and also, you know, the love that I've had from people around me. And, you know, one of the things that's really important to understand in the journey was, you know, walking in the chemo room, being in there 152 times, I saw many people, and a pattern started emerging, and I started seeing that people that wanted to live were the people that lived, and people that didn't want to were the people that didn't, regardless of their diagnosis. And that's very important to understand. People with a hectic diagnosis that were given 6 months, like myself, there were tons of them that were surviving. People that did not have a diagnosis that bad, that walked in and made the decision that they were going to die, died. And there's actually a story in a John Kehoe book. I wrote this book called Mind Power, and there's a very powerful story in there about a guy who actually found a tumor in his stomach, but it was so big it grew, and his stomach was actually sticking out, but he refused treatment. And he then decided to die because he had cancer. When he died, they opened him up and they found that the tumor was benign. He didn't have cancer. So, you know, after going through all of this and getting depressed again, I unfortunately ended up getting more and more depressed. And I realized that my husband had loved me to a point where I could let go sufficiently to actually collapse for the first time in my life, because I'd had to hold it together through all of that stuff. And when we got into a situation where our relationship was super strong and we were like, you know, solid for each other, I fell apart completely. And for the first time in my life, I completely let go, and it wasn't pretty, because the stuff that started coming out of me was not good. And I had to face my demons, and I had to face the darkness, and facing the darkness and your demons is the hardest thing you ever have to do. But if you work through them and you've got people around you that love you and you love yourself, you can do it. And I remember getting a phone call saying that I owed 700,000 Rand to the tax man because the people that had been running my NGO financials had not paid the tax and had not told me that I was liable for this. And this was like a couple of years ago. And I just was like, really, universe? What? And I remember phoning SARS, and it's quite a funny story. I really, like, you can laugh, it's okay. I remember phoning SARS and saying to them, I don't know what to do. I do not have this money. I did not know that I had to pay this money. And I, at that point, was so depressed that I was feeling suicidal. Like, I just did not want to carry on. And I remember the guy saying, well, you know, ma'am, you can write us a letter and it can go through and we'll send it to the legal department. And then when they have decided they've got a 10-day response, blah, blah, blah. And I remember thinking to myself, and I said to him, well, by that time I'll be dead. I would have committed suicide. And I put down the phone. And I remember Skyping my husband saying, I can't do this anymore. This is just all too much. And I don't know what I wanted in that moment, but I actually was reaching out. And I walked to the window, and I remember standing in front of the window, and I was on the second floor, and I looked down and I was like, well, I can't jump out the window because I'm just going to paralyze myself and there's no point. Like, that's not great. And then I was like, well, I can't take pills because I've had so many chemicals in my body. You know how many pills I'd have to take overdose, and I don't have those. And I don't want to cut my wrists, and I don't have a gun. And I remember having all of these thoughts, and I just didn't know what to do. And all I wanted to do was kill myself. And the worst part was I didn't know how. And I remember going to the bathroom, and just like, by this stage, my husband had phoned my next door neighbor, and she was bashing on the door. And I just lay in the bath crying, and my dogs were howling outside the door. And next thing, my husband, superhero, came bursting through the door, and he'd driven through 9 red robots to get to me. And he picked me up out of the bath, and he just said, it's going to be okay. And he just loved me. And everything changed for me in that instant, because I realized that if he loved me that much, I had to start loving myself. And so started the journey of me saying, well, you know what? I've been through all this stuff that I used to fight, and that's what I did in the NGO. Now I want to heal, and I want to heal myself, and I want to heal other people. So I decided to start speaking about my experiences like I am today, to try and help other people realize that there's no shame in going through dark times in your life, and there's no shame in doing things that make you vulnerable. And so my husband has been a pillar of strength for me and said to me, you know, Sam, you need to do this. So I left my job and threw caution to the wind. And what I do now is hopefully let people look at their stories in a little bit of a different way and know that there is hope. But the hope comes from within, and you have to decide. And that is my message to you today, is the decision that I made that day was to change. And it was my decision. And it was my decision to step out of the darkness into the light. Nobody else could have done it for me. And so when you're feeling like everything's going against you and stuff is happening to you, it's not happening to you. Whatever is happening for you if you allow it to help you learn a lesson and move forward. I honestly believe that. Everybody has got stuff that's going to happen to them in their lives. We are all under massive pressure now with COVID, with everything that's happening. But I absolutely believe, like with every fiber in my being, that there's no such thing as a bad experience if you choose to allow it to help you grow as a human being and to become a better person. So it doesn't matter how tough things are. The toughest thing is actually just to love yourself through it and say it's going to be okay, because it is going to be okay. It's going to be whatever you decide it to be. And that's the beauty. And that's what I've realized through this process. I've been able to change my life through my actions, not through anybody else's. And you can make your life whatever you want it to be if you choose to do that. So it sounds simplistic, and it's not simplistic, but it is a choice. And every time I've been at the bottom of the barrel, and I've been at the bottom of the barrel many times, and I might end up there again, I don't know. But every time I've been at the bottom of the barrel, the choice has always been to step out of it for myself. And if you're not going to do it for yourself, you're not going to be able to do it for anybody else. Breast Cancer Month is still very important to me. And I think that unfortunately, because, you know, there's always been a lot of hype around it, and there's been a lot of, sometimes people say overexposure with Breast Cancer Month. People turn away from doing what they should be doing. And sometimes it does the opposite of what it should. So I'm really grateful to Remax for having this, because I think it is still so important that we highlight how many women are being diagnosed and how many women we are losing to this disease and this illness. And what it means to me is always early detection, because I'm alive because of early detection, and early detection does save lives. Like if I had not gone for that mammogram, and that would not be there. And I think that what Breast Cancer Month means is that hopefully more women are going to go for mammograms this month than would have, because they are being faced with it and it's in their faces. And that's what I want to say to all of the women today. You know, even if you've been scared, you've been fearful, please don't wait. If there's something, you know, you can actually deal with it when you know what it is. And that's the thing I found on this journey. The more you know about it, the more you're in control of it, the better decisions you can make. And I promise you there's hope. It is one of the cancers that is the most curable if it is caught early. And I'm here to say to you that if you decide that you're going to beat something, you can. So please don't be scared of the outcome of going for a mammogram. Please go for a mammogram this month. If you take one thing from this call today, please do that. This is such an interesting question, and I love this question. And the reason I love this question is I've been on both sides of the fence. So having been somebody that's had breast cancer, and having been somebody that supported people through breast cancer and other types of cancers for many years, the journeys are completely different, but they are both rooted in a lot of uncertainty, in a lot of trauma, a lot of pain, and really in a lot of feeling out of control. I will say this, having been the person going through the cancer, I found a lot of that easier, because when you're going through cancer, you've got a journey, you've got a predefined journey, you've got to go see the doctor, you've got to, you know, you've got to go through your chemo, you've got to do the, but the people around the person with cancer don't know what to do. And for every person that's diagnosed with breast cancer, you've got 20 people around them, whether it be at work or at home, that are completely like clueless. I get phone calls every single, what do I do? What do I say? Like, I don't know, is this the right thing? Well, I'm here to tell you, having been on both sides of the fence, the most important thing to do is not to walk away and to not connect. Even if you feel like you don't know what to say, lead with that. Lead with, I really don't know what to say, but I'm here for you. You know, send little, you know what, one of my favorite things is actually that people know that you're thinking about them. You don't need to phone them. You don't need to go onto Pinterest, download a whole lot of those cool little things that say, I'm thinking of you, sending love. You know, if somebody just sends me that, all people want to know when they're going through cancer is that they're being thought of and that that you are in their hearts. It doesn't mean that you need to pitch up with muffins every day. Do you know what I'm saying? But the person really just needs to know that you are thinking of them. And my experience was a very difficult one because my best friend was actually supposed to collect me for my first chemo, and she didn't pitch, and I ended up having to go by myself. And I remember sitting, waiting for her, and I had to drive myself to my first chemo, and it was really awful. And when I ended up seeing her, she was like, well, I didn't know what to do. And so the lesson that I take from that, after having been in her situation and feeling like I didn't know what to do, is this is the time when that person needs you the most. And if you say that, you are actually making it about you, and the person just needs you to put your feelings aside and be there for them. It is one of the hardest things somebody can ever go through, and being ghosted by people you love, and it's happened to me, is the most hurtful, awful thing. So even if you just send a heart emoji, I love you, I don't know what to say, that is much better than not doing anything. And also the other thing is, ask the person what they want. Say, I don't know what to do, but could we sit down and have a discussion around what the best plan is for you? What a lot of people do is they try to be prescriptive about the person's journey. And very often the person doesn't want what you're doing. And I say, have you asked them, especially in family situations, and especially with older people. I often find, like, somebody diagnosed with breast cancer, and it's a mom, and, or, you know, she's a grandmother and she's in her late 60s, and the family insisting she must chemo, and she's like, I don't want to do it. And the family go, you must do it. My advice is allow the person the grace to make the choices for themselves. The journey with cancer is a very personal journey. The way that you support somebody is allowing them the freedom to make the choices that they want to make. It's a very difficult thing to go through when people are trying to tell you, you must do this, you must do that. And very often also, especially older people, feel like they have to do that. I see it all the time. Don't make decisions for your parents. Whatever that person decides, the other thing I want you to take from today is really, really support them with whatever their decision is. Because when God forbid you would be put in that position, you'll understand what I'm saying. If a person makes a choice, they're making a choice for a reason. Love them and support them despite their choices, because it's their journey. And as a support, just be there to hold space for them. And what holding space means, allowing people the freedom to make decisions, allowing people the choices that are their own, and really giving them the dignity to go through this journey, you know, without feeling the extra pressure from everybody outside making you feel guilty because you should be going this way. It's not your choice. So regarding cancer and medical aids, the most important thing to remember is that cancer treatment costs a lot of money. And there are a lot of therapies available that are life-saving and that can actually really change the course of your outcome and determine whether you're going to survive or not, like what happened in my case. And people say to me, well, you know, I don't know if it's worth having medical aid and everything like that. Let's just say, okay, my treatments has cost 3 million Rand, and like, there's no ways I would have been able to afford that. So even when people say, yeah, but the medical aid doesn't pay the total amount, I go, well, 60% or 70% of 3 million is still better than no percent of 3 million. And ultimately, my understanding of the situation, having had an NGO and working in the public sector, in this country, our public sector system is really not up to scratch, and we all know that. So as far as possible, if you can, please have medical aid. At least if you don't have medical aid, have a hospital plan and have top up, but have some kind of cover. Because the thing is, having fought in the public system for a long time, all that's going to happen is if something does happen to you, you're not going to have access to these life-saving treatments. And that in itself means you won't have access to new technologies. And that's the reason that cancer patients are now starting to survive so long, is because of these new treatments. So the answer is yes, I do believe medical aid is very important, particularly in a developing country such as South Africa. If you're talking about a first world country, different conversation. Okay, if you're in the UK and you've got the NHS, different conversation. We don't. So please, rather get rid of going out for luxury meals or going away, or I would sooner forego so much and pay my medical aid first and foremost, because there's no point in having like a booked holiday if you're not going to survive your cancer. Like, what is the point? So ultimately, yeah, I think please make sure you can do everything to have the best possible medical cover you can. We live in a country that means you need to do that. I don't have my own children. Unfortunately, due to all of the treatment that I'd had, I am not able to have kids. But I was, at the time of my treatment, I actually lived with my uncle and my cousins. And they were teenagers at the time, two of them. They were boys in high school. One was in matric and the other one was in grade 10 at the time. And it was really, really difficult for them because we're very close. They're like brothers to me. And just to give you a bit of a funny little anecdotal story as to how kids deal with things. I mean, I remember because I was diagnosed the second time with breast cancer. And I remember my cousin, Nathan, hugging me, and he was like, I think he was like 16 at the time. And he hugged me. And I mean, the poor sweet boy, he had no idea what to say, but it was so cute. He said, "Cuzzy, don't worry. You're a cockroach. You'll survive nuclear fallout." So now my husband and I joke that the only thing that we don't keep in the house is doom because it kills cockroaches. So out of the mouths of babes, right? But the point is that I had to go through a very difficult process of deciding then what to tell them and what not to tell them. And my understanding of children is, and I don't have my own children, but I do have stepdaughters who are 22 now, and I've been with them since they were 15. They're very smart. Children have got a very strong intuition. They know what's going on. And to isolate them from the truth, you're not doing them any favors. You know, the thing is, this is a journey for everybody that is involved in the process. Cancer is a journey, not only for the person going through it, but for everybody around them. And if you choose to give pockets of information to them, they are going to create their own narrative. And that is dangerous because that is filled with all sorts of assumptions. And you don't know what's going on in their head. Trust me, they know there's something wrong. Children are smart. If you don't tell them the truth, they're going to make up their own truth. And very often that own truth that they make up can hurt them more than the real truth. The most important thing we can do in life is be transparent. The most important thing we can do in life is tell the truth. We all know the world is in the place that it is right now because of everybody being fake and everybody doing things that aren't congruent with being authentic as a human being. So please, I'm not telling you that you have to go and, you know, be brutally honest and make it tough for them. What I'm saying is find a gentle way of sharing the honest truth with them. That is what they deserve, and that is what, you know, what I did with my cousins. And I can promise you now, the love and the support that I got from them, I don't know how I would have pulled through without that. And if I hadn't been honest with them, I wouldn't have had that either. Children have the most incredible ability to give unconditional love. And what did I start off by saying? You need love in this journey. Like, the healing power of love transcends everything else. Self-love, love from other people. And how can you get that from your kids if you're not going to tell them the truth? You know? So I'm a believer in the truth. That's the answer to the question. That's a very interesting question. And it's a conundrum for me because it actually depends on which day you ask me. So the funny part about it is, through this journey, 16-year journey, what I've realized is that I'm a human and I'm not a robot, and I have emotions. And one day to the next is different for me, just the same way that it is with everybody else. I am completely like, I've managed to get through all of this and I'm, you know, doing the best I can, but I have my down days. I will be fine, and then one minute and the next minute I won't be okay, because That's life, and that's called being connected to your emotions. So the same thing applies for that question. Like, when people don't take care of their health, I sometimes go through phases where I don't take care of my health. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Like, it's not, having cancer does not then turn you into some like perfect avatar for humanity. It's like, and everybody says this to me, and I will tell you this. I went through the most arduous process of becoming ridiculous about my health after the first time I was diagnosed. I ate everything organic. I didn't drink any alcohol. I took the fun out of everything. I was super healthy. But you know what happened? I started becoming so miserable because I couldn't have any fun. So I would go out and I would be like, everybody else was like having a pizza, and there's me having my freaking green organic salad, whatever. And I realized in that process, there has to be a balance. So now what I do is live my life with the Pareto principle, 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, I try to be as healthy as possible. And 20% of the time, I have fun and I connect with my inner child and I do what I want to do. At the end of the day, the only thing that's going to allow you the freedom to really fully experience life is to sometimes let go of the rules that you create for yourself, because we put ourselves in cages. Let's be clear. And what I did through that process of being healthy all the time, but not having any break in between, I actually didn't do myself any favors for my mental health. So it's all about balance. And, you know, no, when I look at people that aren't taking care of their health, I say, that person's going through a struggle. We're all going through struggles. Everybody's got an internal struggle. And I think the wisdom of age, and it's such a cliche, but it's such a true cliche, as you go through more experiences, you start looking at things through different lenses. And what I'm trying to do now, and I'm not saying I get it right all the time, but what I try to do now is look at it through a lens of a more loving heart and look at it from a more point of view of, I also have bad days. I'm not perfect. I eat rubbish a lot of the time, sometimes not a lot of the time. We all human. I love this question. The answer is yes, 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 and yes, and 1,000 yeses. So my husband was trying to get me to use cannabis for many years, and I was of the deluded opinion that you had to be a stoner to use cannabis, and you had to, and I was so negative about it. And I've actually done a lot of research on it, because subsequently I've realized we have all been brainwashed to believe that. And cannabis grows everywhere. It can grow anywhere and everywhere. It's like a miracle. And the amount of healing that it can do for so many different diseases. I mean, you know, I take 4 drops of cannabis oil every night, and I can absolutely tell you that I'm not on anything else. And through my journey of being in the chemo room 152 times, I mean, I promise you the amount of toxicity and stuff that was in my body. And then also then what they did was it messed up my brain chemistry completely. And then remember, I was on Prozac when I was a kid. So my brain chemistry, I've always been on, psychologists have always put me on drugs, you know. I'm pleased and happy to say today to everyone that I'm not on anything except cannabis. And I'm the most stable I've ever been, mentally, emotionally, physically. Like, I'm a healthy person. And all that was happening was whenever I was having a dark time, like, you know, psychiatrists and psychologists just want to put you on antipsychotic medication and they try to tell you this and you whatever. And I've just realized that actually, no, 2 things. Firstly, I needed to do the work on myself. Taking a pill is not going to fix it. Okay. Just telling you, I tried that for 20 years. It doesn't work. It just numbs the pain. And secondly, you need to have a look at cannabis, and especially if you're going through cancer, like, it really can help the pain. It really is amazing. And, you know, some people say it works for them. Some people say it doesn't. The more people that I'm getting to know, more people are taking it for different illnesses, not only for cancer. My experience of it is it has changed my life. It has affected my emotional state. It has affected my ability to be unconditional. It has affected I think at a cellular level, it has actually regenerated my body. And look, if I believe it, it will be so. So I mean, I suppose there's that too. But I honestly have seen an increase in my wellness and in my inner peace, in my ability to deal with stress. my sleeping. I used to take sleeping pills because of all of the treatments. I don't take sleeping pills anymore. And I'm a much nicer person, to be honest. Like, generally, I was a very angry person. And the cannabis has just really connected me with a part of myself that I think it's like a missing puzzle piece that I was looking for. What is it like to face death? It is an overwhelming feeling of suffocation, is the best way to describe it. I remember when I was told I was going to die. You are going to die, is what they told me. And they said, you've got 7% chance of survival. And literally, it's like a blanket being put over you, like you can't breathe. And the difference between being told you're going to die and knowing that you're going to die, because we're all going to die, is not the same thing. And this is something I really want to try and explain that get upset with cancer patients. But because a lot of people have said to me, Sam, you're going to get run over by a bus anyway. Something fundamentally shifts when you are told you are going to die and you have cancer. Yes, we're all going to die one day. Everybody's seeing it now with COVID. The fear of dying, the fear I might die, it changes the way you look at things. So I think there are two possible answers to that question, because it's a choice. What does it feel like being told you're going to die and facing death? Well, for a minute, it felt like I had a blanket over my head. And then I said, I don't like this feeling. And something inside me from somewhere, and I don't know what it is, but I'm very grateful for it, said, I don't like this feeling. And this is a load of rubbish. I'm going to take this head. And I remember to the doctor, but hold on a minute, you're not telling me I've got 100% chance of death, are you? So if you put 100 people in a room, you're telling me 9 people are going to die and there are going to be 7 people in the corner that are going to live. That's what you're saying? Yes. Okay, well, I'm going to be one of the 7. So I think the point, what is it like to face death? It's whatever you decide it to be. And I decided that I was going to kick death's ass. And you know what? One day I'm going to die. We're all going to die. But in that moment, I was not ready to die. And I think that is the whole point, is like, we're all going to face death at some point in our life. You're going to have a choice on what you want to do right then and there. And there will be a moment that you fundamentally decide. And that was my moment. That was my moment. And I think that COVID has done this for a lot of people to a certain extent. And that is why people are feeling so out of control, because the fear of dying is what has happened. It's been thrust upon us, and we've been isolated. And one of the most important things to understand is that you always have a choice, no matter what. I fundamentally believe that. Whatever you are faced with, if it's death, it doesn't matter what it is. It's not about the bad thing that's happening. You've got choices on how you want to respond to it. So for me, facing death ignited my flame to live and my desire to live. That's what death did for me. It actually made how much I want to live, made me realize how important life is. And I remember after I'd been told that I was going to die, I was driving down Rivonia Road in Johannesburg, and I saw the trees for the first time. It was the feeling. It was like somebody had taken a TV screen, pushed the colors up to like max. It was like I was seeing color for the first time. It was actually quite incredible. I couldn't believe it. I was like looking at trees like I was seeing them for the first time. Almost like somebody who can't see and has got very bad sight and then puts on glasses. And I went, what? And that's what death did for me. That's what facing death did for me. What facing death did for me was allow me to see the beauty in life. And I think, isn't that a beautiful thing to go through? So that's why when people say to me, like, cancer's so terrible and it's so this and whatever, and I go, well, it depends on how you look at it. For me, it was the best I've ever had. It was the biggest opportunity I could use to change myself and to change my life. So that's it. If you had to ask me that question last year, I would have given you a different answer. If you had to ask me that question last week, I would give you a different answer. If you had to ask me that question 20 years ago, a different answer, because it's all about the journey. And I think the most important part of gratitude is being present and making sure that you are consistently checking yourself for everything that's happening in your life. And that is work, and it takes work, and it takes work to be present. And I think I have found myself slipping, as we all do. You know, it's cancer is not this magic thing that happens to you and then forever you are changed. It doesn't work like that. There's still work during the journey. I find myself going through periods where I slip into being disconnected, and then I have to do the work to reconnect again, to reconnect with the gratitude, to reconnect with who I am, to reconnect with everything that's happened to me. But it is the most important thing to know that it starts with you and taking action, because stuff doesn't just magically heal itself. You have to actually do the work. And what I mean by the work, because people always say to me, but what does that mean? What is the work? The work is understanding your emotions. The work is understanding how you make yourself feel, how you make other people feel. The work is understanding the things that are good for you, the things that are bad for you, the things that actually help propel you forward as a human being. And when you start going inward and you start asking yourself those questions, everything starts shifting and everything starts changing. Because by our sheer nature as human beings, it has to go back to being, you know, the way that you were. And you've got to shift yourself to get yourself back on that track. I say it's like the yellow brick road. So for me, self-awareness is like getting on the yellow brick road. I was Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz once, so it's a good analogy for me. And the journey is being on the yellow brick road. You are going to stop off every now and then, and things are going to happen, but as long as you get back onto that yellow brick road. So I would answer that question by saying, I don't think it would be normal not to actually falter and to have these stages where you feel like you aren't being grateful. That is part of the journey. When I meet people and they go, oh no, everything's fine all the time, that's when you start asking the questions. But what are they learning? How are they actually progressing as a human being? Because the funny part about life is we don't grow in joy. And people look at me like this, what? But just digest that for a minute. We don't grow in joy. We grow through the dark times. We grow through the difficult times. We grow through the challenging times. We are happy and joyful, and that is amazing. But if you can see the fact that you're going to fall off the bicycle and it's going to be painful, but that's part of the process. As long as you get back up on the bicycle as quickly as possible and understand what you need to do to make sure that you can stay on the bicycle. And that takes me to an important part of the process is, what are the tools that you are using in your life to help you stay on that yellow brick road? I've got multiple different ones, and I talk about having a tool belt always. And different tools that I use meditation. I love music. You know, whatever yours may be, yoga, it could be, you know, I do kinesiology, I do shamanic healing. But everybody's got their different things. But what are your tools that allow you the freedom to get back onto that yellow brick road? Because you are going to get pulled off it. It's the point. You know, one of the reasons that we're here is for these things to happen so we can grow and fundamentally expand as human beings. So I welcome that. I think that trying to make your life a neutral life and make everything fine all the time is pretty boring, to be honest. so if you can look at it as an adventure and look at the dark times as part of that adventure and say, well, you know what, like, it's a chapter in the book, it's not the whole story, that allows you to keep your eye on the horizon. But being kind to yourself, that's where you need to start. Be kind to yourself, start looking inward, start doing the work, and start discovering who you are. Who are you? What do you love? What makes you happy? What drives you? Who don't you like? Who do you like? Start doing things like, when you've got people around you, feel how your body feels with people around you. Very important thing. I'm starting to learn that certain people make me feel like this, certain people, and try and surround yourself with the people that make you feel like you're your best version of yourself. Surround yourself with and do things that make you feel like you are the best version of yourself. We all know what those things are, and start implementing them on a daily basis. Try and do a little bit more every day. My wise husband said to me when I was super depressed, he said, Sam, if you just do one more thing every day, just do one more thing. And if that one more thing is just getting out of bed today and you put clothes on and you're not in your pajamas the whole day, you know what? Go and stand in front of the mirror and tell yourself you did a flipping good job. Because that's the other thing I do is mirror work, and it works amazingly well. Tell yourself you love yourself. Tell yourself you're amazing. And this is not an arrogant thing. Self-love is not arrogance. I think we confuse that. There's a big difference between loving yourself deeply at a soul level and being a vacant, like fake, I love myself person. They're different things. Being self-aware and being connected is self-love. And if you don't love yourself, you're going to struggle to love other people. And please hear me when I say this, because it took me a long time to get to that point, and I still struggle with it. That's my big thing. I have to constantly tell the little inner child, it's going to be okay, you're all right, but it's doing the work. So I want to first say thank you very much to Remax and to Shay and to everybody. This has been a lovely interaction, and I really have enjoyed spending time with all of you. And I know this is a really tough time that we're going through, and I want to leave you with this one thought. Whatever you believe you can create, I have managed to turn my life around multiple times, and I'm going to do it again, because we're all going to go through dark times. But please just try and be kinder to yourself, try and be kinder to people around you, try and maintain a positive attitude, and please also go for that mammogram. Really important. Thank you.